sample of how we're going to handle that stuff. So you'd probably see a bunch more little things pieced together. But so that's like I was saying, little bite-sized pieces. So you see a little conversation here, you see maybe a little scene there, and they kind of, as you play, kind of fit together into a bigger storyline, as opposed to us like having a cutscene or having stopping the whole game for you to see something.
You run into him later. That's where you get the crown from. Back.
So that's the guy with the crown. Okay.
Yeah. We'll obviously make things like that probably more obvious in the future. We were kind of working with what we had on hand at the time, kind of proof of concept stuff, seeing how that's kind of like what we were talking about with the Barbarian and Cain. We're trying to, at this point, we have a lot of the pieces, and we're starting to put them together and kind of really get real good feedback and play a lot of the game and try to feel like where we can push it, where we need to pull back. So.
I'll go again. Have there been any consequences to not completing quests? We always hear, if you don't do this, the city will be overrun by zombies. I mean, it never is,
Well, let me think. How can I phrase this? We have so much that we need to keep secret. Yeah. So I think there's main story arc stuff, and then there's side quests. For you to get between the different acts in the game, you'll need to complete certain quests, so you won't have a choice. Kind of, it was that way in Diablo 2 as well. But if we tell you something like if we put a consequence in front of you, we're going to do our best to show you that consequence. But if we say, well, the town's going to be overrun by zombies if you don't do this, and then the town's overrun by zombies, and then you can't do anything else, that's not really fun. So if we put something in front of you, we're going to try to make it pay off in a gameplay way. I guess I'll put it that way. I think you're going to be asking all the questions.
Class-based quests. Are you going to get any quests just for individual classes?
Yes.
Just will the dialogue be different?
No, you're going to get class-based quests. There are going to be, what we're trying to do with the characters that you're playing is really give them a backstory and an arc of their own. When you start the game, you're not going to know everything about your character. There will be maybe some intriguing hints about their background, and you'll kind of, you'll know enough about your character to, get the feeling of the archetype, whether they're the barbarian or the wizard, what they're supposed to be. But kind of like a movie or a good book, as you go along, you're going to find out more about your character, what maybe something that happened in their past, and they're going to have like their own arc. Because what happens is, it always feels like you're kind of outside the story. And we're trying to make you feel a lot more part of the story. One of the ways we're doing that is by giving you the voice, so you can kind of drive it forward too. You can make your own choices. But at the end of the day, because you could play all these different classes and it can affect the story different ways, in all the Diablo games, it focuses more on some of the non-player characters, like Tyrael maybe or Cain. So to kind of give you your own little story, we've included the class quest to really fill out the feeling of your character as a well-rounded individual, and not just not just a cookie cutter, paper thin device to play.
So those really are, you won't just get the same quest and it'll be different dialogue. I mean, you'll get a quest with, the wizard you'll never ever see any equivalent of with a barbarian or with
for the class specific ones.
For some quests,
yeah, we're not going to have, there's not going to be a whole lot of those, but there will be a kind of, like I said, a story arc for each class, which could be, 4 or 5 quests, something like that. And a lot of the other quests will probably be, I'd say most of the other quests will be playable by everyone, if not all the quests playable by everyone. But I probably don't want to go any further with that answer. No, it's just us here. No one else is going to figure it out.
Are there any gender ones? It doesn't go that far.
No. We had just included the gender because we found that a lot of people would or would not play certain characters just because of gender. And we thought, in this day and age, everybody's kind of used to it now. In the previous games, it was very specific, and some people wouldn't play the Amazon because it was a woman. They didn't want to play a woman, or the Barbarian was only a man. They wanted to play a woman. So we thought, well, let's let everyone play every class and not have that distinction anymore.
The previous 2 Diablos were very famous because of the replayability.
Yes.
Which type of game mechanics would you use in this one any other game mechanics?
Well, I think the random dungeon is kind of like the basis of it all. But one of the ways we've taken that and expanded upon it is you have out in the wilderness, our outdoor areas are static in that they're not random, but we have little chunks of them that can be replaced. So they're not, even though the grand outline of the outdoor areas is always going to be the same, the little encounters you're going to have along the way will be random.
So it can be in one game is there a tower, but in another one is there a house?
Exactly. In one game you might get this quest to rescue this guy. In another one you might get a quest to save a caravan. Kind of like in Diablo 1, there was much more randomness to the quests. So we have our main story arc quests, which you're always going to see. Then we have some side quests, which you're probably always going to see. And then we're going to have a pool of random things that happen, whether they be quests or little adventures. So there's that. There's also, we feel, or I really believe that, when you play the different characters, you get a different feel, not only because of the personality and the story stuff, but you really get a different feel from their skills. I mean, I've played extensively in testing this out to make sure it was the best it could be for you guys to play it. I've played all the classes throughout the process, and the game feels really different. I mean, it's sure you're running through the same stuff, and especially this demo is very short. You're running through the same stuff, but using the different spell trees or skill trees. Even one character could feel different depending on which skill tree you go down. So, if you're really into the game, you could try all these different character builds, and then you have all your different characters. And then, of course, there's the class quests. And as you saw, if you played any of the two different classes, when you talk to that first guy, he reacts to the different classes very differently. So there's all these different levels depending on what you want to get out of the game that could bring people back into it, plus, playing with your friends on co-op. So
it's possible to know how big is the outdoor area in square miles, for example?
I don't know, really, at this point.
Yes.
I couldn't even start, because right now we're building a lot of that stuff right now. So what tends to end up happening is we'll build it, we'll play it, we'll change it, we'll play it some more, we'll change it before we finalize it. So we're not quite sure even what the broad parameters are. We have a lot of really good ideas about what they're going to be, and I wouldn't even know how to compare them to square footage.
They're all very diverse areas, too.
Yeah.
Very different types of areas, all four of them.
I have to go film the panel, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Where are we going to get our questions from now?
How will mercs work in D3? Will it be possible for us to equip them like we did in Diablo 2?
Mercenaries, yes. Well, we have two different types of mercenaries now. As you saw in the demo, if you got the quest where you could rescue the adventurers or their leader, those guys, that's a really light level where they're just along for a quest, or they're just kind of like cannon fodder, where you can't really control them or have anything to do with them at all. But when you have what we're calling followers, they're the guys who you can equip. You can give them different weapons. You can give them different armor. They'll probably have some quests that involve them much more than in Diablo 2. It was kind of like, even though you could equip them and stuff, they were almost just like a game mechanic in the body of an NPC. Whereas this time we're just like we're doing with your character, we're making them much more individuals with their own backstories and their own reason for being in the world.
Will there be different types hireable throughout?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
But much more specific, as opposed to, like, a lot of them felt interchangeable. Well, they were very interchangeable in Diablo 2. They just had different skills. These ones are going to be much more geared towards certain gameplay types, I guess you'd say. So it'd be much more specific, if that makes sense.
As, marrying up with particular classes, you mean?